Welcome to this episode of They Learn You Win, the podcast from Skooks. I'm your host, David Wentworth, and in this episode, we talk to Cole Bastian, who's Senior Director of Learning and Culture at HOA Brands. Cole is considered a transformational learning executive and organizational architect. In all of his roles, Cole has focused on turning learning and development into a catalyst for enterprise growth, leadership excellence, and cultural transformation. So in our discussion, we talk a lot about the challenges of delivering learning in a highly dispersed, high turnover franchise environment. We also delve into the unique aspects of his organization's brand. So sit back and enjoy my conversation with Cole Bastian. All right, so now I'm joined by Cole Bastian, Senior Director of Learning and Culture for HOA Brands. I think you might know them a little more informally as Hooters of America.
Yeah.
First, right out of the gate, I've done a few things with you guys before, presented with you, and I know that sometimes people hesitate at first. Mm-hmm. They think, with the brand, and they think, well, I don't know, and they don't even maybe want to say the name. And after meeting you guys and hearing your stories and the way that you support and develop your people, I think the brand does so much for their employees. So I think it's great, and I'm really happy to have you here. So,
well, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, and to that end, let's talk a little bit about some of the things that you guys are doing. I mean, I know that you're very much invested in the future of the people that work for your brand.
Yeah, it's interesting. You were talking on the front end about how some people might have preconceived notions of what Hooters is all about, and one of the questions I'll often ask them is, well, when was the last time you visited one? Because oftentimes it's not recently or at all, most of the time.
Right, that's true.
Because we're not what I believe most people think we are. Right. We are, something entirely different, which leads to, in the L&D area, or specifically development for our people, we're very intentional about the programs that we put into place, the way that we design our programs, the way we deliver them, and the amount of content and the access that we give to our people, because we want to be able to show the naysayers that Hooters is a world-class organization when it comes to all things, but specifically within the learning and development space, and be able to say, we have 60% promote from within our organization, with, a little over 50% of that being female within our company, which in the restaurant space, to have that percentage in restaurant operation leadership is pretty unheard of, and we're very, very proud of it.
Yeah, as well you should be. I mean, I've seen some of the testimonials of people that have moved up the chain there and are very happy to be there, or have then moved on to do other things. And then in that, they look back at their experience with you and realize how great it was and how that helped grow them and develop them and put them on that path. So, I mean, it's really fascinating to hear about. So let's talk a little bit about some of the actual ways that you do that. Because again, we talk to a lot of folks who work in the restaurant industry. It's fascinating to me. And it's, these frontline workers, obviously hourly, not sitting at a desk. So we want to do all these great things and develop. How do you do it? How do we get the stuff to them? So what are some of the ways that you're reaching the learners?
Yeah, so over the last probably 3 years, we've really embarked on a digital transformation within our organization, specifically within L&D, because at the time we had, an LMS that we won't mention, RIP to them. There was varying levels of commitment and varying levels of buy-in into the program. And so we did a lot of printed material, a lot of printed content, and nothing against that. I think there was a time and space for that to be acceptable or to be appropriate. But when you look at the learner that's within Hooters, because we have, a very unique space where majority, over half of our team members, are ages 18 to 25, always, because there's such high attrition. And within the Hooters Girl role specifically, they're there, for a time.
Yeah.
And then they choose to go on and do something else. It's a place where they can get their start, where they can earn money, where they can build confidence, whatever that looks like, and then be able to move on to whatever the next time in their career is. And so we need to, within our organization, within L&D, be able to provide learning experiences that meet the needs of those learners, as well as the learners in different generations. So we decided, okay, well, we're going to go on a digital transformation. So we obviously went with a new learning management system, and we selected Skooks, which has been a huge part of our success, because we call it the navigator of our career journey of those that come into our organization. How are we supporting them? How are we developing them? And the way that we do that is through career journey. And then, in order to go on any journey in life, you have to have a compass of sorts, right? And so because we're digital, we called it eCompass, very intentional, because it's navigating their journey through development at Hooters. And so additionally, we then said, okay, well, now we understand when we got great buy-in from our learning management system and where we're going to be able to kind of help people navigate through what they're going to learn. Now let's look at the actual material and the content that we're providing them. And so we don't print any materials anymore. It's entirely digital, which I'm fairly certain most organizations can't claim that in all aspects, whereas we save, $250,000 every year over previous because we didn't or we don't print materials anymore. And we use a program called Flipbook or Flip HTML5 code that we house within, it's a bookshelf, and we house that within eCompass or Skooks. And that's where all of the learning programs are. And so you've got our Hooters Girl program, our MIT program. It's all digital. There's hyperlinks. There's videos that are embedded. We've got music that plays when they get to certain places of it. There's different pop-ups and visuals. So it's extremely dynamic. It's also updated in real time. So this place of L&D of the past where you design this wonderful program, you implement it. 2 months later, it's now needing to be updated. You've got all these old materials out there, and you go visit a store or location, and they've got 3 or 4 versions ago of that content. Now there's none of that because they get the most recent, most updated version right away.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. Once something's printed, it's printed.
Yeah. It's memorialized.
And there's no global update for that.
Unfortunately not.
No. The books that you're describing and then the flip, where are they? Is it time in the restaurant, in the office, they have a computer, or is there a tablet that's available to them? How are they actually accessing the stuff?
So, for legal purposes, we provide all of our locations training tablets where they can use them. And most locations have 2 training tablets because we've got a learner's guide and a leader's guide for all of the programs that we go through. However, what we're finding is most of our team members are opting into using their cell phone. It's obviously not required. It's not something, that gets down a whole nother path. So we provide really good equipment for them to use. But I think they're just more comfortable using their own device, and which is very characteristic of that learner, especially the Hooters girl or the 18 to 25, 26-year-olds. They want to use their own devices, and they're very comfortable with them. And so we've got a really great adoption rate of people downloading the eCompass or Skooks app on their phone and being able to log in. And they also then don't have to remember their credentials, which is an age-old problem, especially when you've got frontline workers and nothing is single sign-on. Because they don't have have access to Microsoft, like the corporate personnel do. So anyways, we're finding that that's where they're accessing it most of the time.
Got it. And you mentioned the tablets for legal purposes. What about, even if they wanted to, they're not doing the stuff off hours?
They can't.
Right. So it's geofenced, like they can't.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have everything is for our hourly positions.
Right,
so for manager positions that are salaried, if they want to do something outside of the restaurant, we allow them full reign into doing that. But within Skooks, we obviously set up that there's an hourly worker, and based off of the stores or the units that they're assigned, they can only do training when they're actually physically in that location, whether they're on a tablet, they're on their own device, they're on a computer, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It's all geofenced to where they are supposed to be working.
Yeah, because I think that is an issue in that frontline environment, obviously hourly workers, and it's that push-pull of, well, we know that the demographic of this audience wants to use the device, but there's a lot of hesitance and resistance in the organizations to do that for all these different reasons. But I think, we've gotten to a point where we sort of have to let it go, and path of least resistance, right? The less friction we can create for everybody, the better they're more likely they're going to do their job.
Right. I mean, we encourage them to use the company provided equipment if they want to, because it's got bigger screen, obviously. It comes with a Bluetooth keyboard. So it's got a little almost kind of mobile laptop setup that they can use, but they just choose to do it on their own. But then, of course, we've got the protections in place with the geofencing that is there. And I think the other thing is it's not just about the legal side of them doing it while they're clocked in at work, because that's obviously most important.
Right.
But from a learning perspective, when you're going through content and you're learning something, specifically in the space of guest service, at least in my opinion, probably can, put that across all skills that you're learning. You can do some synchronous learning, right? Or asynchronous learning where you're learning on your own and you're going through any learning module, reading through a training manual. But in order to actually then transfer that knowledge to skill and be able to actually do it, you need someone to help you navigate through what that process looks like, be able to provide you with feedback. And so the way that our training models are set up in our skills proficiency framework that we've got at Hooters, everyone needs to be with a trainer throughout their journey, especially when they're first getting into that new role. There is hybrid. Obviously, we've got e-learning modules and other pieces. But I say all of that to say that when a trainer is with them after they've done some of that asynchronous learning, that's what helps them transfer it into actual skill application.
Right. And sort of, not, I don't want to use the word immediately, but like in the moment. So it's not, I watched this thing or experienced this or clicked through this thing at home.
Right.
And then the next day or the day after,
correct,
I'm going to try to put that into practice. In other words, okay, you've internalized it. Now let's see what it looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is something I've brought up a few times on the podcast, but I love to hear it because it jives so well with some research that we did that found in that environment, frontline, especially restaurants, the biggest challenge that both workers and employers have is there's very little opportunity to do what you just described, to turn knowledge into skills, to apply. How do we do that in such a sort of, fast-paced, high-pressure environment? And I think you guys are finding, a good way to bridge that, right? To start to that transformation of I've watched this and now I'm doing this.
Right.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that we're perfect at it, but pretty proud of the experience that we've created. And I think it starts with the commitment that we have from all levels, from our CEO down to you have to have training within our organization. Our people have to be well trained in order to be able to execute against what Hooters wants to execute against, because we're not the typical restaurant that you go to. We've got great food, yes, but what really sets us apart, or what's our 20, what makes us unique, the 20%, is the Hooters girl and the service that she provides. And that's not something that you can do without having really in-depth training and without having the commitment behind doing that. Yeah. And so is there a resource that it takes to be able to train them? Does it take finances? Does it take money to do training on the front end so that it's dedicated and they're able to? Yes. All of the answers to that question is yes. However, it pays off in dividends on the other side, because you've got team members that are able to execute against brand standards versus you're now trialing, is what we call it, with the guest.
Right.
We don't want you to trial with the guest.
No.
We want you to trial in a controlled environment and an experience that allows you to grow. And then we're going to move you into working in solo shifts on your own, whether it's this Hooters girl or manager or whomever. We were going to, extend that to allow you the opportunity to really grow in your ability to execute.
Yeah. And that impacts something that's obviously critical to your business, is that guest experience, right? That number one thing. But we've also found in our research, and this is a good, example of it, is that when people are in this job and they feel as though they are supported, right? They're like, I'm getting the right training, I'm getting the right amount, and I feel as though I'm given what I need to do the job. They stay way longer. I think it was something like 4 times more likely to say that they're going to stick around compared to those that said, well, I'm not getting the support, I'm probably going to leave within the next 6 months. Right. And it's like that investment. And yes, we've all recognized that this is, for a lot of folks, this is not a forever job, right? But while you're here, we give you everything you need, and then we're going to develop you whether you stay with us or go on. And I think that's another thing that you guys are really good at, is supporting that entire spectrum, right? If this job is for you, you're just going to come in and I need to earn this money, I want to do it for this period of time. I don't need to be on management track. I don't need to go on this. That's fine. You're not going to feel left out. You're not going to be denigrated. We're going to be supported so that you are confident in that role. If you do want to do something else, then we're going to support that too.
For sure. I mean, the mantra that we follow within my team is, how can we prepare all of our team members for life within the brand or for life beyond the brand? Because we recognize that within the hospitality space, that this is most times their first job or second job, and it may not be their forever job. And that is entirely okay, because we want them to come work for us. We want them to, learn the skills that they can while they're at Hooters. And so our commitment to ensuring that they are developed and that they are given a platform to be able to say, this is what I want to do. We provide tuition, and we go beyond just the normal kind of, okay, we're going to give you these different skills. One of the things that we talk to a lot of our team members about is, well, what is the number one skill that you learned here? And outside of, kind of the ones that come with the, the experience or the restaurant industry, is confidence. Specifically within our Hooters girl population, they say, when I came to work at Hooters, I lacked confidence. When I left the organization, I was able to say, I now have confidence in who I am as a woman, the agency that I have to be able to choose what I want to do with my career. And that translates into all of our positions. But we really do believe that when they interact with Hooters, specifically the programs that my team puts together, we want them to be all the better for having worked for us, so that when they go and do something else and they're working a CEO job, or they're doing, whatever it is, a doctor or a scientist, they're able to look back and say, Hooters had a part of my history And I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to work there, because that's what leaves a lasting legacy and impact. And I think it kind of goes back to what I said a little while ago around, we're very intentional about being the best learning department that you will ever encounter, because we want that to be what people say about us.
Yeah, I mean, especially in an industry where brand is everything.
Yeah.
And to constantly be growing brand champions all the time.
Right.
That's something else. There are those restaurant frontline environments where people aren't getting that support, and those folks aren't out there in the world talking about, XYZ place, you should go there.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the exact opposite.
Right.
It's what you're hearing from people. So I think that's a great approach.
I mean, we've got over 500,000 Hooters Girl alumni who've worn the orange shorts at some point, and they are the biggest advocates and defenders of the brand. We don't really have to say anything when people ask questions, and that's not just in the Hooters Girl population, it's also in our kitchen team members. It translates across, but that's of course our largest demographic of team members that work for us. They're the biggest advocates of the brand, and because it's a part of their history, and that it was a part of them being able to go on to do whatever they wanted to do, because they took advantage of our tuition reimbursement program so that they could get skills outside of the restaurant, or they took advantage of the management programs that we had so they could use those skills somewhere else. They don't want anyone to degrade the history of what they were doing and the choices that they made and the things that they did, that Hooters helped them to be able to do.
So let's wrap up on this. I was wondering if there is anything that's sort of on the horizon from you, from like a project, an initiative, something that you want to do or are going to try to do that you're excited about, or is there something maybe that you're in the middle of? Anything going on there that you want to talk about?
Yeah, so I'll answer it in kind of two parts. Okay. One is on a professional side and one is on a personal side, because I think it's really fascinating. But on the professional side with Hooters, one of the things that we're in the midst of right now is what I'm calling revolutionizing our guest experience, because over the last several years, we had differences in terms of how we manage that and expectations, and won't go into all of the history, but it got us to a point where we are today, where we're not 100% certain that we're always hitting the marks in certain areas. What we've done this year is we're now really taking back charge to say, this is what we want to be known for, really going back to the roots of what Hooters has been known for 40 years, and we're going to be known for the next 40 years. But the current populace of people that work for us maybe weren't aware of what that was. So we're calling it guest obsessed, and we're really going back to, because we believe that our Hooters girls, where they are, they're cast into a role, just like someone who goes to work at Disney, right? Whether it's Mulan or Cinderella, or they're going to be Mickey Mouse or Minnie Mouse, that's a role that anyone can play because they're being cast into it if they meet certain criteria. The same thing for our Hooters girl population. And so we're really kind of building off that, and we call them our scenes. So a lot of people will call it like steps of service. We call it scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, and scene 4, really going into this, movie style cinematic language. And the girls are absolutely loving it. If you think about it, to make one behavior change possible so that it sticks within all of your team members is a monumental feat. We are truly revolutionizing every aspect of our guest experience right now, and we're seeing immediate impact and transformation because of the way that we approach learning and the way that we don't just, kind of one and done, drop something, move on to the next. There's an entire sustainability plan. And so while we rolled it out this year, what we're looking at in the horizon on is, how do we now take what we have done, capitalize on it, and continue to sustain it? So we're in the midst of looking at, how do we do that? Maybe it's a mystery shopper program. We're looking at how do we use goals within Skooks, which is a feature we haven't yet used, but specifically within the management population, to look at our guest feedback that comes through our guest feedback platform. How can we really use that data to enable the business and the leaders of the business to make better decisions when it comes to executing against our guest service experience? So that's kind of the big rock. And it's a monumental task for my very small but mighty team to accomplish. And it's going to be, several years that we're going to be working on this. But we're already seeing immediate impact. And we're already hearing from guests. We're seeing improvement. I mean, it's only been in play, this new program, probably since the beginning of summertime, or maybe even later than that, around August, perhaps. And so we're already seeing immediate impact in the feedback that's coming in from our guests, and we're going to continue to see that, which then is going to ultimately translate to sales, because we did, several years ago, as we focused on kind of our management population, and we saved the organization a ton of money to be able to retain our managers for a longer period of time versus those who hadn't gone through a new program. Now we're looking at, okay, we're still doing that, saving cost, but now how can we help from a learning and human behavior perspective really look at growing the organization? And then personally, one of the things that I'm really excited about is my partner and I, Dean Doran, we're in the midst of writing a book all about instructional design and skills and all those fun things. So, it's not published yet, but we're in the midst of getting that proposal out in the next week or so. So hopefully, so look for us, Cole Bastian, Dean Doran, because we want to be able to share some of the experiences over our careers that we've had. Not that, anything we've done has been, anything different than perhaps others have, but we've had tremendous success in multiple organizations. Yeah. So we want to be able to provide that to others because I'm so passionate about the learning profession and truly believe that learning is the enabler of any business because it capitalizes and they understand human psychology.
Well, I love hearing that you're writing a book. I did not know that. I think that's fantastic. And good luck with that. I think,
thank you.
Look, we're here at DevLearn conference. So obviously, learning professionals are very hungry for resources.
Right.
You say, well, we're not the greatest of this or that, but you have got these experiences, you've had success. And I think, people want to know and they want to learn from that. So that's fantastic. I look forward to that.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, and I believe we're the best at it, but I also want to be humble in my approach, right? And realizing that everyone has, different experiences, but, the success that we have received from the things that we've done and kind of the way we've framed all of the programs and things over the years that we put together, we want to be able to share what that looks like so that, we feel like we've kind of cracked the code or we found the secret sauce, maybe to a degree. And we believe we have. I mean, that's why we spent countless hours writing a book. So we certainly believe it. Yep. But we want to be able to share that with others so that, whether you're brand new into the learning profession or you've been in it several decades, how can we really look at things from a different perspective, and then also really be able to impact the organizations, and be able to translate that into organizational success so that learning becomes not just a cost center, but it's looked at as a true strategic partner within the business that is enabling the business to be able to be successful through humans.
I mean, L&D has to be that sort of catalyst for change in the organization. It's the thing that's going to drive everything forward. So I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing the stories. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And
you too, David. It's been great.
So people should look for you on LinkedIn and whatnot and follow you around so that when book time rolls around, they're prepared.
Yes, Cole Bastian, or you might see it as Cole in parentheses in the middle, Plumber Bastian. Yep. So same person. I was recently married, so have a new last name. But reach out. We would love to share and talk about anything that might interest the listeners, that we've shared about today, whether it's Hooters, the book, or anything in between.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, David. It's been great.
Thanks for listening to this episode of They Learn, You Win, presented by Skooks. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow or subscribe in your podcast player. And follow me, David Wentworth, on LinkedIn. I try to distill what works and what doesn't for L&D leaders so you can stay up to speed on the latest insights, ideas, and tech. See you next time.